Hey, this is Sanyam Bhutani, and you're listening to Chai Time Data Science, a podcast for data science enthusiasts where I interview practitioners, researchers, and cagglers about their journey, experience, and talk all things about data science. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Chai Time Data Science Show. In this episode, I'm really excited to be interviewing one of my peers and friends from the Fast.ai community, Zachary Mueller, who's a student at the University of Washington, currently pursuing his bachelor's degree in software design and development. In this interview, we talk all about Fast.ai, the course, and Fast.ai V2, the upcoming library. There's a bit of name jargon here, but Fastai V2 stands for the new library and Fastai is the name of the course. We talk all about Zach's experience with Fastai, his journey into deep learning and Fastai and the projects that he's built while going through the course. We also talk about a study group that I'm really excited about, and you can find the link to the study group and the related forum posts in the description of this podcast. Zach will be starting a study group that'll go on for a few months that builds on top of FastAI V2, the newer library on which the course is yet to come out. So if you are hyper excited and can't even wait for the course to start, you can just jump in and join the study group. Anyone and everyone is welcome to join it. We talk all about the study group, the kind of efforts that went to it, what can you expect out of it, and how can you best contribute to it. I really enjoyed this conversation. We also talked a lot about the top-down learning approach and how can you go about learning FastAI. How did the both of us went about learning FastAI? So I'm really excited to be releasing this. A quick note to the listeners, this episode, along with all of the future releases, as a reminder, will have data science terms checked or properly fixed subtitles. If you're a non-native English speaker, please turn on the subtitles in YouTube. I hope it gives you a better experience in watching these interviews. You can also expect the blog post version of this to come out on the website sanyambhutani.com or on hackernoon.com in a few weeks from the release of the video. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Zach, all about FastAI, FastAI V2, and the top-down learning, broadly speaking. Please enjoy the show. Hi everyone, today I'm really excited to be talking to a peer and a friend of mine from the Fast.ai community, Zachary Mueller. You might know him as Zach on the forums. Zach, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure, honestly.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Now, before we start talking all about FastAI version 2 and your upcoming study group that even I'm personally really excited about, could you tell us how did you get started with machine learning? What caught your interest and what led you to investing a lot of time into this field?
So that's actually a very interesting story. I started off in college as a marine biologist.
Okay.
And since I was a kid, it's all that I wanted to do. And then college hit, Bio 2, and I just did not get along at all. And I'd made an agreement with my dad saying if marine biology didn't work, I was going to go do tech.
Okay.
For the longest time, I hated coding.
Okay.
But I switched my major to software design development. And that was maybe 2 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And then that same year, my dad had watched, I believe, the second version of Fast.ai.
Okay.
And he had said, hey, Zach, do this thing. And me, being the rebellious teenager, no, Dad, I'm not going to do this thing. And so then, a year passes and Jeremy comes out with the third version of the course. And my dad again goes, hey, I think you should really do this thing. It's really cool. And so finally I was like, fine, I give up. I'll try it. Keep being try, and now here we are a year later. Um, so that's really what it was. I started out in marine biology, didn't work, and switched my majors, started getting into Fast.ai and seeing how I could apply it in different environmental impactful areas. And here we are.
For the audience, I'd also like to mention that at the time of recording, you're still in your undergrad degree, you're still pursuing it.
Yes, I'm going to be here for another year and a half, I think. So I graduate not this fall, but the following.
Gotcha. Now, could you tell us more about your Fastai journey once you decided to not rebel any further? You took up the course. How was the journey like? What led you to completing it towards the end? Because I know there's a dip in the middle of the course where you feel like nothing's working, but I think you've completed both part one and part two of the courses.
Ish, yeah, completed's a broad term.
Yeah.
So it actually took me something like 8 or 9 months for me to finish the first part.
Okay.
And part of that was I had watched the first 2 lessons, and then, Jeremy goes, go try it out for yourself. And so I did. I wanted to try and build an app with my friend on classifying snakes.
Okay.
So after lesson 2, I spent a few weeks working on that. Got decent results, but it wasn't enough to where I wanted to post it in the share your work, because it was good, but not good enough for me. So then I went back to the course, made it all the way through lesson 5, where he talks about Rossman, and I think lesson 6, which I think was the head pose key points. And kind of stopped there because I was picked up to do some research on the campus. And so I kind of stopped at Tabular for a long time and just focused on that. And that's as far as I made it in the course for 5 months or so.
Okay.
So then maybe 6 months ago now, I decided, okay, I'm going to watch the rest of the course. And then once summer hits, I want to do the matrix calculus, the part 2, and the intro to machine learning, because I didn't even take that. I directly started in Fast.ai V3.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the gist, basically, of where the journey is. Okay. So slow to get through the course, but still doing a lot.
Got it. You now again, you're still an undergrad taking up the course, and I know for many people this is a mental barrier that they feel like that maybe you need to know the calculus which you learned in the later stages of undergrad. Can you confirm or deny, and how do you recommend an undergrad should go about doing Fast.ai or just pursue the materials?
Have you done pre-calculus? Yes? Okay, you're good. You won't understand all the math, but you'll understand at least some of it. Because it took me until this summer to start the matrix calculus for deep learning, and it was still a rush for me. Mm-hmm. But no, in no way do you really need math. Honestly, you really don't. What I've learned is going through and trying, all these models and everything. I never do math.
Yep.
I leave the math for Les Wright, where he's doing all the optimizers. That is very math intensive. If you want to go that way, learn the matrix calculus. But I'm focused more on applications and projects, and so I don't necessarily need the math a whole lot. And so I never put a big focus on it.
Yeah. Now in the, I think you've just completed 1 year on the forums. I was going through your profile. And
yes.
in that period, you visited the forums 16 days. What I mean by that is you've spent 16 days worth of reading time on the forums in just 1 year.
Yeah. Basically, for a while, it turned into my version of Reddit. So I was just wake up. All right, we'll see what's new on the forum, read up, see what people are doing, and more importantly, see what people are having issues on. Mm-hmm. And seeing what their solution is, because it's a great way to learn.
Yep. I know you're pretty active on the forums. I don't think you sleep, because your message replies pretty much take less than 2 minutes on the forums whenever I ping you. Maybe it's the time difference, but I don't think you sleep.
I do. I promise. Last semester was a bit different because I worked 3 night shifts.
Okay.
So I wound up getting off work at the library at 2 o'clock in the morning. So then I didn't sleep. Now we're starting to get sleep. But I swear I sleep and I get at least 6 hours a day.
That's good to know. Can you tell us how did your way of approaching? Because I know there are multiple threads on the Fastai forums itself of how do you do Fastai. I'm good at how not to do Fastai. I've written about
Mhm.
that, but can you tell us how do you do Fastai and how has your approach evolved over the past 1 year?
The first thing I do, so like obviously I'll get a problem. Now, for me, since a lot of it was research, the professors were more so, here's a data set, go have fun. And so from there, I'll do some research. If it's tabular, especially look at how do I do the best feature engineering for it, what recent papers have come out in regards to this particular area. But otherwise, I will go until something breaks.
Okay.
And then I'll go and back and I look at the documentation. And if I still didn't quite get it from the documentation, I'll go look at the source code.
Mhm.
And I understand that's a very big thing that people are afraid of, but it really saved me a lot of times looking at it. So yeah, really just, find a problem and see how far I can get it without running into issues. And if the other two I can't quite get, I'll go search on the forum, go read, because more than likely with almost any problem in Fast.ai, if you've had it done, more than likely someone else has had it happen.
Yeah.
And more than likely they asked on the forums. And so I tend to just go look, see, and sometimes like if it's segmentation, it's I forgot that one of my channels or one of my classes happened to be wrong, and so I get this CUDA runtime error, which is
Mhm.
a very minute error that unless you've faced it before, you don't really know it exists.
Yep.
And so it's really a lot of push pull, what breaks, what doesn't, and then figure out how to fix what breaks. I can't think of a single problem that I've gone through where everything worked flawlessly first time around. And that's not on the library, that's on me and my understanding of the library. But once I face it before, now it's I know why you got that error because I faced that error a few months ago. And so that's where you go into, well, I respond really quickly, and it's because I faced most of everyone's problems at this point.
Yeah.
And so instead of, having them delve with, well, I couldn't quite find it on the forums, and yeah, I know, here's your answer. Here's how to fix it. So
I think again the number of days of your experience, if I may, on Fastai forums count there that you remember which thread the problem was discussed on, and you may be able to recall what do I need to really search to get around the problem.
yeah, yeah, it's something like that. There's a lot of problems and there's a lot of ways to fix them, and 99% of the time it's usually on me that winds up causing it. So
Now, going back a bit, I believe you had just started your career as a programmer as well. How did you went about going through the source code? Like you said, like it's a mental barrier of sorts because FastAI in itself also follows some different source code practices. Any best tips there?
so I really started the source code diving when Fastai 2 came out, because Fastai 1 still scared me.
Mhm.
It wasn't until October when Jeremy and Sylvain started working on V2 that I started looking into it. I started getting familiar and unafraid with source code. Um, it's you have to walk it out. One of the ways that I'm going to try and help fix that is, and this is a little sneak preview for you. I haven't announced this anywhere, and I won't until I get to it in the course. In the study group, I plan on walking you through how to implement key point heat maps from
Okay.
start to finish in the library. So going from here's a concept to how do we make it work?
Awesome.
Because there's not really too many guides on that, and it's a 2-month struggle trying to get that working right now.
Okay.
And it's not that it's hard, it's just a learning experience, really. So
Okay. I'm personally really excited for that. We'll talk about the course and V2 in a bit, but I believe you worked on a few projects while going through the course. Maybe
yeah,
you can discuss them in sequence. I
sure.
believe the first one was Lockheed Martin drone racing competition that you took part in. Could you speak more about that?
Sure. So the Lockheed Martin drone racing competition happened, I think, after I was about 2 months into Fast.ai.
Okay.
Now, I didn't use Fast.ai for this at all, which was terrifying because Fast.ai was the only real way I'd gone about anything. But a few of my classmates and I were invited to join a team for this drone racing competition. And essentially it was split up into 3 tasks. The first one was you make a video, so it wasn't too code intensive. The second one was you were trying to find the coordinates of a gate. So say I have a square, I want to find the corners of the square. And then the third was combining everything together to where you're drone racing. Now my part was on the second task.
Okay.
And I knew that Fast.ai wasn't too good with key points back then. And so I wanted to go away from it. And I wound up going to YOLO, the object detection algorithm. And I went about it a little differently to the point where each coordinate, I built a box around it. So now I have a bounding box corner finder. Okay. And then I can use some basic geometry in order to figure out where the middle is, or if I miss a gate, I can go through and find the other ones. It's a very, in terms of complexity, it's very rudimentary and kind of abstract. But using the algorithm in this way actually got us 5th place on the task out of thousands of teams.
Well.
And mind you, this is 2 months in. So one of the things that I can't stress enough with deep learning is have a creative mind. If the idea seems dumb and everyone else is yelling at you for it, do it anyways, just so you learn, and you'd be surprised what happens. So
again, I'd like to emphasize that you didn't have, I believe you didn't have any deep learning experience, so to speak, before this. No experience with any other framework outside of Fast.ai even, I think.
Nope. And so that one was using Darknet.
Okay.
So PJ Reddy's version, which that was in its own battle, because that's TensorFlow-ish, and I have to figure out how to convert that over into inference code, and that was, oh boy. But that's a challenge 2 months in. But at that point, I'd kind of taken a break from Fast.ai to focus on this. So
okay,
it was a fun challenge.
Okay. Now coming to the next challenge that I think you took up, it's media bias detection with ULM-FIT. Can you again speak more about that one?
Sure. So that one was also a competition.
Okay.
So the school runs something called CodeFest, where you have 48 hours to go from idea to product, and you're pitting off against basically a whole bunch of teams. And so a few people that I worked on the Lockheed Martin project with developed a team, and they wanted to do something with, fake media, fake news. And so I joined their team, and we were trying to figure out how to make it all work. And I'm like, well, I just got past the language model bit in the course. We have ULM-FIT, which is, a really good language model for this. And it's basically sentiment analysis. So I went through and I found this data set called the fake news corpus. And I got a really cheap Paperspace GPU. And for 48 hours, all I did basically was train a language model and go through numerous headaches with it that, tend to happen whenever you're rushing. But by the end of it, I had something that was actually pretty good. We took in, now on a whole, it's multi-label where we have, it could be pseudoscience or it could be political. And so what we wound up having to do is our mentor helped us figure out how to write an appropriate formula where we took all of these different characteristics and then overall came out with a trustworthiness grade.
Okay.
Now, I'll admit, this is nothing crazy intensive to where I want to go and shove this on Facebook or anything. It was a toy project, but we wound up winning that competition as well.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Yes. And the hardest part about that was 48 hours. And basically I was the only one working on the model. So it was fun though. I enjoyed it, and it gave me a new way to go and apply Fast.ai and something I was too afraid to do because language models don't train in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
They train in an hour to 4, if not more. So
Again, I'd like to emphasize this because as far as I know, it's a mental barrier again for many people, is that you don't need to complete a thing. Like you said, you don't I don't think you have gone through a bunch of books of calculus. You didn't even complete the Fastai course before jumping into the competition. You just jumped into the competition while going through the course. You can do the things in parallel.
exactly. Like, I honestly, that's how I learned the best, because it's okay, you have a realistic standpoint, you have a goal, let's go beat that goal. And if I run into issues or I want to go further, then I'm going to go look directly on that topic and become better at it. Now, I will say I did take AP Cal in high school. So it's not that I haven't done calculus, but since I've done deep learning, I haven't done calculus, if I'm
And
being honest.
I don't think you can just read a calculus equation and think of a code block in your head, right?
No, for a while that was one of the things I wanted to try to do. So I made some like little practice problems where it was, here's the code, let's try converting that over to calculus, or here's the calculus converted over to code. Um, Basically, the furthest I got was in my computer org class. I realized that a summation is basically a for loop, which blew my mind. And I was like, okay, well, it'll help me pass computer org. I'm okay now. We'll stop there.
Interesting.
But that's all I've really got there. So
Again, it's a point of jumping back and forth. As long as you're not educated, you can't do the problem. But to do the problem, you actually need to do the problem. So with Fastai, at least I believe it's a matter of jumping back and forth between the course and something you want to do.
absolutely. As I said, I took 9 months to complete the first course.
Yeah.
And that's not, 9 months of me struggling on the course. It's 9 months of me, learned one concept. Okay, let's go try and apply it, and, maybe get lost on there for a month. Okay. Bad news is I didn't do the course for a month. Good news is, though, I learned a lot from that.
Yeah.
And now with that new viewpoint, I can now continue the course.
Yeah, that's a great point. Now, talking of another dimension that I think you've done a project in is tabular data, and the project is around tabular model applications to cybersecurity. I know you'll be talking more about this in your mega study group, but if you could speak a bit about this one as well.
Sure. So when I mentioned the research earlier, a lot of the actually all of the research I did at the school and am doing was just with tabular data. And because everyone here had been focused on random forests and support vector machines, and no one had tried neural networks. And when I brought Fast.ai to the school, they kind of saw an opportunity there. And so I got to have a lot of practice with tabular data. And so I worked on a few projects. One was with trying to identify operating systems on a network.
Okay.
And so that was like, identify, is this computer a Windows 10? Is this computer a Windows 7? Using just traffic data. Another one is, really, I guess the other one was identifying movements based on data from an Apple Watch. So was a person walking? Was a person standing? And that one I had the most fun with because I had a baseline that I had to beat in random forest. Now, I didn't have to beat it, but I made it a goal. And what came out of that project 6 months later was some super creative feature engineering and noticing some really cool behaviors with like the niche activation function and the ranger optimizer that you didn't really see with tabular data, because I've worked a long time with tabular data, long being like 4 or 5 months straight. And basically it's kind of a one and done thing, but with these newer techniques that I had just experimented with feature engineering, I could actually push past that. And I was seeing noticeable differences between, optimizer 1 versus optimizer 2. up to like 5% difference. So currently, I'm going to be presenting that paper in March, and that's where the course comes into play. If it's published by then and I go to the conference, then I'm going to include kind of how I went about that for time series a little differently in the course itself. If not, then I'm going to record a separate lecture and kind of go over, here's what I did. I'm not sure if it'll help you guys, but this is what I found.
Interesting. Really looking forward to that one. Now, talking a bit more about the issue with projects, I think this is a point that I really struggled with as well. Is how do you come up with an idea that you want to spend a few months on, or how do you even discover an idea? How did you discover these ideas?
I'll be honest, I wasn't the one that discovered them. So like the competitions were all kind of there. Now the ideas were from other people, and I kind of worked with them. And that's really where all of these projects have stemmed from. It's, even the image classifier with snakes, how that basically went was I told my best friend, hey, I'm doing this, image classification. I know you know nothing about tech, but here's what I do. And I showed him, this is what it's capable of. And he immediately goes, I want to build a snake classifier, because he wants to be a herpetologist. He's like, that would be really cool. All right, there's a project, and I'm going to try and do as best as I can. I will never be content with myself until I have like basically close to 90% accuracy on it. Now, I know Jeremy says it's really hard to get 90% accuracy on most anything, but that's the goal I had. Get as close to it as I could.
Yeah.
And so what that mindset now gives you is, instead of, okay, I tried ResNet, I tried, XResNet, now I'm done. No, you're not. What else is out there? Go try the models, because if it works in PyTorch, it works in Fast.ai. How do these different models work? Can I beat it a little bit more? Can I beat it a little less? And then it's suddenly your obsession, and it's a healthy obsession in a way, because now you're learning a lot just by exploring. So, outsource to friends, see if they can figure out some unique application that, can go apply with this. If not,
Gradient student descent.
oh boy, yes, gradient student descent. Otherwise, honestly, have the same mindset and just go play with data sets. Like I know Jeremy says Kaggle, you don't have to compete in it. Look at the data set, see what the leaderboard does. Okay, now that's your own leaderboard until you beat it. Now that's your leaderboard. Go and work with the data until you understand how the data works, how it all fits in the framework, and how changing a few things can affect your outcome.
Now,
So that's what I got.
You mentioned looking for things outside of Fastai. Lingering on to that point, let's take the snake classifier example. How did you approach the things outside of Fastai when you decided to continue trying to get to that accuracy? Because again, people usually get stuck inside of that Fastai loop. Okay, maybe I changed the learner from ResNet 34 to 50 to 152. What's next? How do you come up with ideas when you stuck there?
So my number one resource is papers with code, actually, because for most of their papers, they'll go through and apply the source code. They have a link, and honestly, what I do is just go look. Okay, do they have a PyTorch GitHub? Oh, they do. Okay, I can go play with that model. And so instead of CNN Learner, I'll use the oh so scary Learner, which if you actually look at what they do, they're not too different. And so I'll just, throw a model in and see, how fast does it train? Or a lot of cases, throw a model in, I'm getting headaches. Now, instead of giving up, maybe, take a few days break, go and figure out why you're getting that headache. Is it a tensor mismatch? What the heck does that even mean? Go learn. And, just work on it, debug it. And I'm not saying debug it in like 48 hours. When I had brought NTSNet into the Fast.ai framework, I had worked on that thing for a month, had a billion questions on the forum, and almost gave up at least 3 times a day. And it's just, sometimes go walk away from a project for a few days to a week. That's okay. That's healthy. You don't have to get it done immediately. Pace yourself. You're learning. And so be realistic with your time management. Don't get so focused and so stressed out that you hit a roadblock and suddenly you're like, well, whatever, I'm just going to throw it all away. No, don't. Just put it on a shelf and revisit it later. And you'd be surprised what, after a few days of reading, scanning, whatever, you come back from a fresh angle and you can attack the problem a little differently.
That's great advice. For the audience, I'd like to mention the website is called paperswithcode.com. Do check it out. It's one of the great resources out there.
Absolutely.
Now coming to Fastai version 2, I know there's a bit of naming jargon here, but version 2 stands for the latest upcoming version of the library, and the course that will go along with it will actually be version 4 of the course, just for the audience to clarify things. But I know you're an active contributor to Fastai V2 library. Can you tell us more about the library and what's the excitement all about?
So basically, everything that you had a problem with in Fast.ai 1 is in some way or another addressed in Fast.ai 2. So one of the things I had struggles with was labeled test sets, because they came in really handy when I was evaluating my model's performance on, a test set that I had the answers to, not necessarily Kaggle where I don't. In V1, you had a clunky way of figuring out how to do that. V2, you could just pass in a labeled data set. So I can have infinite data sets that are labeled and unlabeled, and it's not tied to a data bunch. So V2 provides you with a lot more freedom to approach problems a little differently, and it's a lot easier for you to follow. They have the source code notebooks right there that you can go through and run and go, okay, I want to do point detection. I remember how that worked in Fast.ai 1. How does it work in Fast.ai 2? Where's that notebook? Okay, I'll run it and see how everything kind of works. Which in developing, that is so helpful for me. Because, I'd mentioned I'm working on this heat map thing right now, and I'd spent a few months on it, and I'm looking at the notebooks and going back and forth and realizing all these little tiny details that help make our life easier.
Yeah. Now,
so
again, do you have any prerequisites for jumping into that? Because again, that's a mental barrier. Do I need to complete Fastai version, part 1 and part 2 before jumping into that? What's your take on that?
For right now, Fast.ai V1, at least the few lessons to understand kind of the broader concepts, definitely help before jumping in, so that way you understand, what in the world is a data bunch, what in the world is a data loader, and how does all of it play a role, because it's kind of all still there, just refactored, and you can work with it a little more. Otherwise, Jeremy is coming out with a new version of the course in March, and until that point, I have a study group where the only real assumption is coding to some degree, a year or less, and let's get you guys up to speed with get as many applications in Fast.ai 2 as we can, so you understand the broader picture.
Awesome. Now, talking about the big mega study group or project of yours, can you tell us more about that, and why did you decide to even start it in the first place?
So this actually goes back a year almost, about 6 months. As I mentioned, I kind of Fast.ai brought neural nets to my university through me, because I was the only one that had ever done it. No one had heard of, Jeremy Howard, Fast.ai, or PyTorch, scary.
That's unfortunate.
It is, but we're a smaller school, so it's okay. Yeah. But it did provide its own struggles. And so from there, I was like, okay, I'd been doing this thing for about 6 months, and everyone on the forum is doing all these study groups. So I'm like, okay, we'll try and do one here at the school. And that's where you got the practical deep learning for coders that I was running at the time. And so that started in the summer, and sort of was teaching the students all these little tricks that I had learned from doing Fast.ai for 6 to 8 months at that time, and sort of branching it off from there. And then I did that a few times. Then last semester, I only had one person that showed up, and so I kind of just retconned it because I was just doing too much, which was a blessing because, well, last semester also Fastai 2 came into the picture. And so it's like, okay, well, now I have time to focus on it. And so earlier this year, I had a gentleman on the forums. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Actually message me and ask if I was planning on live streaming any of my study groups. His name was Given GG.
Okay.
And he had asked me if I was planning on live streaming because the notebooks had helped him. And at the time I was like, all right, I'll see, maybe, I'm not really doing anything this semester, but I want to try. It scared me because basically the study group that I've been working with was anywhere from 2 to 7 people. But I knew that the notebooks that I was writing helped a lot of people out and, provided a different sort of aspect that was a little more than the course, but, I still wanted people to do the course too. And that's where the new course or study group comes into play.
Okay.
So it's been a 1.5 year journey for me there as well. And running this sort of mini study group has really forced me to learn a lot about the library because you have to know a lot of aspects of it from every topic if you're going to do something like this.
Can you tell us more about the structure of the study group? I know it's quite an intense work for you as well. It's a few months of even teaching before even leave out of the picture the efforts that went into preparing it. Can you speak to the structure?
Sure. I'm still preparing it, and I will still be preparing it throughout the entire thing.
It starts in 2
So
days.
it's fine. No, I've got a decent chunk prepared, but a lot of the times before it was structured to be just an hour, hour and a half, where I present a notebook and then, everyone's on their merry way. And one of the recommendations I got was make it a little longer. And so I sent out a poll to my local, to the cybersecurity club here, which is kind of for everyone, regardless if you're cybersecurity or not. I was like, hey, I want to increase the time. Would you rather it be an hour and a half with time to work or 2.5 hours and you have time to work? And everyone was like, 2.5 hours, please. And so then I kind of structured everything again to where, all right, I can get away with talking for an hour, hour and a half, and everyone's okay with that. And so with that in mind, about winter break, I started prepping at least some of the I'll Walk with Fast.ai 2 notebooks. Now, the other day, I finally made an outline of how everything I wanted to go, because I had it in my head, but I want to see just how many notebooks. I think I saw 33 different individual notebooks over the entire thing.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of prep work going in, but I've slowly been attacking them as we go. So if anyone here is going to join A Walk with Fast.ai 2, don't expect the notebooks to be completely done. As Sanyam mentioned, I am an undergraduate student, so I'm basically working on them a few weeks in advance if I know that'll take me that long in order to work with them. And plus, with Fast.ai 2 in such a heavy development, a lot of times the notebook that I ran a month ago won't run now because something changed.
Yep.
That's been a fun experience. But, so it's a lot of push and tug. Don't expect on my end from me, I don't want to overstress myself by, I have 33 notebooks that I need to get done by January 15th when we begin. Instead, it's let's get as far into it as I can and then just slowly work my way through the rest of them. So it's been a fun challenge, but I really think that it'll be a good study group, and the stuff that I'm going to be presenting is basically all stuff that I've encountered and seen, so it's not just coming out of nowhere. So
digging into the structure a bit further, can you tell us about the topics that you'll be covering in this walkthrough? What all can we expect out of it?
Sure. So I'm going to try and bring in as much state of the art as I can. And along with that, some of the issues that people have had on the forums. And so, like, I just posted about this a little while ago, but lesson 5, 6-ish is going to be style transfer. And it's just style transfer. And the reason for that is it's style transfer using the notebook dev library now. And building our own model, building our own loss function, and then taking that and setting up to a realistic deployment setting of how do I basically work with this thing. Now, it's not like Starlet or anything where it was beforehand. It's more so building the Python script for it. But that's just kind of one of the ways. Along with that, I'm going to be working with pose detection. So that's that heat map based thing I mentioned earlier. All the topics Fast.ai covers, along with some of them that they don't, like when you don't necessarily have the class in the image. How do you tell your model, I don't know? Along with that, I plan on incorporating stuff like multi-fit, the multilingual model that came out a little bit while ago, built on ULM fit, stuff like devise, which is usually a part 2 topic, but I saved it for the end, so hopefully we'll be up to that point. Along with a few of the state-of-the-art tabular models and seeing, okay, I understand how that works with vision, but tabular is a very different beast in how it works. How do we do that? So essentially think all of Fast.ai in a nutshell, plus all these little tips and tricks and little bits to work with state-of-the-art.
Again, I'm really excited about it. I'll have the forum topic linked in the description for all of you who want to join the group. Everyone and anyone is welcome to join it if any of this
Absolutely.
sounds exciting to you. Now, I'm also curious of what kind of efforts and planning went behind the scenes. How did you come up with the structure and ideas? How many hours or how many sleepless nights went into this?
So I went on winter break recently, and that was about a month. So think a month of sleepless nights. But no, on a realistic standpoint,
More than that.
I've done this a few times, and at one point I just decided, well, the Fast.ai course jumps from image to tabular to NLP, back to tabular, back to NLP, back to image. And I felt I could have done at least a little better in a study group setting. And so I decided, let's rearrange everything and focus 2 months on vision. We're going to start with image classification, end on GANs. And that'll cover pretty much everything. And then we'll spend a month on tabular and then a month on NLP, and then we'll, get a little more advanced with everything. And so working with this sort of mindset, I then went to, okay, how do I want the scale of the difficulty to go? Because you can go really complex really quickly with this stuff. And I didn't want to scare people too much. I wanted them to go, okay, this is going to be a little bit more challenging, but that's okay. And so with that in mind, I kind of scaled the structure to be, all right, lesson 1 and 2 of the course will cover with specifically like the image classification and the custom. We'll do that lesson 1 because we have 2.5 hours. Lesson 2 will cover MNIST and stochastic gradient descent, and then sort of work our way up from there. And so I believe in my plan, I have like segmentation as the following week, and then key points the following week, and then basically getting more and more complex, but in a way that I hope won't scare people too much. And so I kind of work that with everything. So that's how it'll be for the images. And then once we get to tabular, we'll spend 2 or 3 lessons getting used to, the adults and then the Rossman, and then let's go look at PyTorch code. And same for the NLP.
Okay. Now, on the flip side, can you tell us how much effort it took you to get to this level of proficiency? And also, because taking a study group or even teaching to a study group involves a lot of efforts. both in terms of preparation and getting to the level of confidence where you can go ahead and teach a bunch of people? What sort of efforts went into it for you personally?
So the best way that I guess we could go about this would be the first time I ran the study group. When I did, I hadn't finished the course. I knew I wanted to introduce it to the school, but I had not finished it. And so I attacked the problem sort of like, I know what I've worked on a lot, and I know kind of where I've been going with it, but I've been too afraid to, go to the rest of it. Well, now I kind of, okay, I'm teaching these even like 2 or 3 people. That's terrifying when you're not a good public speaker, usually, at least at that time. And so it turned into okay, well, I have to get away from that block because now it's not just me. It's, people are showing up to have me teach them this, essentially. And so it was great for me because it made me get familiar with everything. Now, at the time, that was sort of a broad spectrum. I learned certain things very, very well because I spent a lot of time on it. But a lot of other things I didn't. Like GANs, I'm still confused by GANs. And they terrify me. They still do. I know what they do. I know kind of how they work, but I refuse to work with them. And so it's focusing, the best advice that I have on that is focus on a topic and beat it until it's a dead horse, basically. Okay, spend a month on image classification. Don't get past lesson 2 and just work on it until you understand a lot about it. All right, now let's go to the next topic. Does this one interest me? NLP, it's hard to train. It takes a long time. No, we'll shelf it. I'm not going to forget about it, but I'm also not going to spend a lot of time on it because I don't need it right now. So don't think that the way the course teaches is the way you have to do it. What interests you, focus on what interests you, and you'll wind up learning a lot more than if you were spreading all your assets out. And so following this sort of guideline helped me get to where I am, along with just being disciplined. So, which I'm terrible at doing, by the way. I just fell in love with the library, and so discipline turned into fun time. And so I wound up working on the library for like an hour or 2 a day, be it reading forum posts, which still counts, or seeing what's new, seeing what papers come out. Do they have good results? Okay, what's the PyTorch code? And sort of following this pattern for basically a year. I literally visited the forum for 365 days in a row. That was not 365 days of reading nonstop. It's, read a post or 2 here, post or 2 there, sort of broaden that knowledge. And I might not have done the thing that they're trying to do, but I know this post exists and I know this problem exists. So, if I run into it, hey, there's an answer. And working on that for, honestly, even 3 months of just doing that sort of style, the amount of knowledge and how familiar you get with the library really will surprise you, because it surprised me. Because at some point, my dad had taken the course before me, and I was always asking him a lot of questions. And before he realized it was the other way around, and before I realized it was the other way around, and just be disciplined, work on it for a few minutes every day. Or if you feel like getting sucked into it, then get sucked into it. I'm not going to tell you not to, because I'm very bad at doing that. But just work on it as much as you want, as often as you can, and it'll come naturally. Eventually.
That Now I again want to share a selfish thing that I did with study groups is because I didn't know anyone in my local times and that wanted to do the course. I basically started a study group to invite people to do the course with me, and to the extent we actually did a poll, and I decided to start it. If I got more than 20 votes, it got close to more than 100 votes. So if you're thinking about taking the jump, just take the jump and figure things out as you go about the study groups. That's the best thing I did in hindsight. And when you try to revise any concept with a bunch of people, I think it helps you find your blind spots in a better fashion, and no one is going to call you out. In fact, people will help you identify those things, and it's a amazing experience, if I may.
I completely agree, because that was one of the things I struggled with. I was the only one for a while at the school that even knew what Fast.ai was, and so I basically had the forum to rely on. And generating the study group, while it was there for others, it was also there for me, because I got to see what their issues were, how their topics were going, and showed me some ways that I didn't realize, hey, this could be done this way, or hey, they're confused on this. Why are they confused on this? Let's go see why exactly it's going. And either running or joining a study group is invaluable when you get to stuff like this, because well, I know you're trying to, but I probably for a very long time won't go and sit in the course itself, and so I won't have access to those resources. So do the only other option and make your own.
Yep. Again, like it's not just a study group, but it's also a learning group for yourself and everyone around. You don't have to be an expert. No one is gonna hold you by the ear if you get anything wrong. You don't have to be an expert. You can pick things as you go. That was one of the mental barriers that I had. So if you're scared to take the jump because of that, or if you're scared to do it because you've just done one lecture, just do it anyways. People will enjoy it, and it's more of a collaborative experience. No one is Jeremy Howard except of Jeremy Howard himself. So just do the study groups if that's something that you're excited but still intimidated about. Is my take on it.
Absolutely. Like, that's actually how now that I'm thinking about it, that's how I chose the topics and how I went about approaching them. It's, what was the most scary? Okay, I'm going to do the bad thing and save them for the end. So that way, towards the end, I'm freaking out mentally. But, you can rearrange the course and teach it or at least go about it in a way that's a little bit easier than the very large jump that Fast.ai does, which there's nothing wrong with that. Just it can take a lot of people by surprise. After you get to lesson 3, suddenly you're going over GANs and you're like, what? And that's okay. Rearrange it if you have to. There's nothing wrong with that. Where you're at is where you're at. And as long as you're trying to build yourself up, having a team, having a study group, it helps encourage you to get to that level.
Yeah. Now, coming to the study group that you'll be starting, can you tell us how can we best support it, and what areas can we noob Fast.ai people support it in the best way?
Show up, but yet don't show up. I'm honestly terrified by how many people I'm expecting for this first lesson, because mind you, all I'm used to is like 7 people, and then I post about it on Twitter and it's got like 4,000 views. I'm like, okay. Forgive me if I make any mistakes. I am doing this in my free time. And if you see some issues, go ahead and just post a GitHub issue with the library, how it is. Things change all the time. And also just be patient, because as I said, I am building the course as we're doing the course. And part of that's due to just how the API is being made. And so, yeah, just remember, I'm only a 22-year-old student. So I'm doing my best that I can for you guys. Just trust that, and don't be afraid to call me out if I get something wrong.
And what areas can we best contribute to, or any suggestions if you want to contribute to any part of the study group? I'll announce this on this interview so that I don't back out with chai breaks, but I'll try to be an unofficial TA for the study group. For anyone else who wants to contribute to it, what suggestions do you have?
Really, I guess take close notice with how the lessons are going and get really familiar with it, because I'm trying to build it in a way to where as we go, I won't say 0 to hero, but 0 to close to hero in Fast.ai too. And so just help everyone else out who maybe isn't used to that style of teaching or has a hard time understanding how this library works. I hope that your different perspective on something else on this particular topic will help explain it a little better. And so really just, it's a community. Help people who are struggling. If you have suggestions and topics that you want me to work on, if we have a little extra time, Sure. Otherwise, I can help you guys build these notebooks for these topics. And absolutely share them, share whatever the work you're doing, whatever work you're having, if you're having issues. So help each other out as best you can, basically. Because I can't be everywhere at once. I wish.
Also,
So
please take your time with it. I know you just mentioned it took you 9 months to complete the first part. It's taken me over than 2.5 years, and I still haven't completed neither part one nor part two. Take take your own time. There's no rush. You can still learn a lot by just going thoroughly through a part of even the library or the lecture or literally your study group as well. So there's no rush. Even though I think you'll cover it in 3-4 months. I know I'll take my time with it.
yeah, please do. That's why I'm recording it. So that way, if I decide not to do it next year, I have the lectures. And that's kind of what I was hoping, is it would turn into something like the Fast.ai courses, where there's a particular lesson that I can go watch that goes over a particular topic, and it might not be close to mine, but it's close enough. And so I can go watch it and then ask any questions if I have some. So that was honestly my goal from the very beginning. Give you guys a bunch of resources to help you through problems that I've seen, either commonplace that people work on, or problems that people have problems on. So, yeah.
Awesome. Now, my final question to you on this topic would be, what best advice do you have for anyone who's still feeling intimidated to take the jump into open source or fast AI or even deep learning broadly?
Plug your nose into a cannonball. Honestly, it's not as scary as you think it is. I know it's a big library, and I know that navigating it that sometimes can be confusing, but really it's a mental block on yourself. And take it in strides. Set realistic goals for as you're going through it. I know some people have done it by going, okay, let's go everything that data source does and learn how it all works down to the nitty gritty. I don't do that. That's not how I want to learn it. But if that's how other people want to learn it, then absolutely, because now you become an expert in that. I'm more, let's go over everything in a way, attack it in particular instances, and if something's too difficult for me, figure out why, and go work on the thing that made it difficult for me to understand it. And then, it could be completely unrelated to Fast.ai and could be a coding thing. All right, let's go learn that coding thing, and now I'll go back to the problem. And really, it being open source is very helpful, because if you have a question, the code is right there. You can go look at it, and with Fast.ai too, you can go run it and go see, oh, this is why this is going like that. Okay, now bigger picture, I can go do X, Y, Z.
Again, I want to emphasize, if you're not comfortable with this, is because it's the top down way of learning. Bottom up way of learning has been defined well over, I think, over a century now, so everyone knows what to do. But since this is the top down way of learning and it's not as common as I think both of us would wish it were,
Yes,
it's supposed to make you uncomfortable. It's something new, so if you feel uncomfortable, still do it anyways.
absolutely.
Now, my final question, which actually is from Jeremy, is what do you think of Thai food, which I believe you had the first time in SF when you visited him?
Yeah, so I went to a conference recently in San Francisco,
Okay.
and I didn't email Jeremy at the time because we weren't communicating as much compared to like now on the forums. And so at the time I was like, oh, Jeremy's this big guy, he won't have time for me. And I had made a post saying that I was going to work on the library when I was back from a conference in San Francisco. And next thing I know, Jeremy goes, you're in San Francisco and you didn't visit me and we didn't grab lunch. What is wrong with you? And so I kind of just had this moment of, okay, I'm getting lunch with Jeremy Howard, this man that I have looked up to for, the past year and a half. It was very scary, but I was excited. And so we kind of figured out, okay, we can meet the next day. Let's go grab Thai food. I was like, I've never had Thai food. I don't know what to eat. And so Jeremy, I'm very thankful for him. He's so nice and understanding. We got to the restaurant. I sit down and he goes, okay, now here's what I recommend. Mind you, we haven't even said a word to each other. And he just starts detailing a list of what I wouldn't like and narrowing down exactly the right meal that I would enjoy. And Jeremy, please forgive me, but I can't remember exactly what we had. I just remember it was, I believe, something like egg noodles or curry with some sort of wrap. I'm terrible at that. But without Jeremy there, I would have had a heart attack because I did not know anything of what to eat. And it was actually pretty good.
Interesting.
And I did enjoy the Thai food. Have I eaten it since? No. But that's because I am over in Pensacola. Fun fact, we're right by Alabama. Our food is very southern.
Okay.
But it was a good time.
That's an interesting story. Now, before we end the call, I want to list down any of the platforms where we can follow you for the listeners. All of these will be linked in the description, your Twitter, and I think your blog. Of course, Fastai forums, anywhere else that you'd like to mention, any other platform?
No, the blog I haven't updated a whole lot recently. That's just because of everything that I've kind of gone through. I plan on writing some more blogs. That's a New Year resolution. So at least get once a month if I can. The forums and Twitter. Those three is pretty much where you'll see anything. Especially the forums. I am on there, as we know, every single day. And I tend to want to respond very quickly if someone messages me. So that's what I got for you in terms of following me.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Zach, for joining me on the podcast. And thank you so much for your contributions to Fastai and also for creating the study group. Really excited about it.
Thank you. It was honestly a pleasure being on here. Thank you for having me.
Likewise. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to give it a review or feel free to shoot me a message. You can find all of the social media links in the description. If you like the show, please subscribe and tune in each week to Chai Time Data Science.